Tonight, setting the time and tone for a high-stakes meeting between Canada and the U.S. What will be the focus in a face-off with President Trump?
I will fight for the best deal for Canada.
Plus, the royal ceremony bringing the King to Canada. Pierre Polyev's second chance at a seat.
It's actually a beautiful blessing for us. He lost his seat. Why does he need to run here?
The hand-picked riding and the MP stepping aside. The downshift auto workers have been dreading.
They've got mortgages to pay and kids to feed.
And they'll never forget Canada's courage fighting for their freedom.
People they had never even met.
Plus, trendsetters before influencers were the trend.
It's just heartbreaking.
A closing retailer sparks memories of fashion and friendship.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. For the first time since his election win Monday night, Prime Minister Mark Carney addressed the nation during a press conference where he outlined a detailed agenda and tasks he plans to tackle first. On Tuesday, May 6, Mark Carney will travel to Washington to meet with President Donald Trump. His new cabinet will be sworn in the week after. Parliament will be recalled on May 26th, and the day after that, King Charles will be in Ottawa to deliver the speech from the throne. CTV's Abigail Beeman takes a closer look at what lies ahead.
In his first post-election press conference, Prime Minister Mark Carney said Donald Trump respects strength, and his plan is to build Canada strong.
My government will fight to get the best deal for Canada. We will take all the time necessary, but not more, in order to do so.
Carney heads to the White House Tuesday. He says the length of planned meetings and the seniority of the other people scheduled to be there show how seriously the president is taking things. And Carney will be focused on two planks, fighting tariffs and working on the broader relationship. But those watching closely say don't expect things to be resolved in the short term.
The meeting with President Trump is just the first step in a very long game. So the first thing that the Prime Minister has to do is get a good rapport at a personal level with President Trump, because that counts for a lot.
From being hosted at the White House to playing host to the King and Queen.
This is an historic honor which matches the weight of our times.
Carney said King Charles accepted his invitation to open Parliament and deliver the speech from the throne May 27th.
And that is it clearly underscores the sovereignty of our country.
The throne speech sets out the government's priorities for the next Parliament and is usually delivered by the Crown's representative in Canada, the Governor-General. A monarch hasn't read it since 1977.
I don't think anybody should think the King arriving with the Queen in hand is going to solve any tariff problems on their own. It's a small gesture. It may be meaningful and help build a kind of solidarity around Canada's distinctiveness.
The Prime Minister told us a few more things about the next session of Parliament. He ruled out a governing deal with the NDP, and while he's still working on building his cabinet, he said it will be efficient, focused, and respect gender parity. Heather?
Abigail Beeman reporting from Ottawa. There is much to absorb from Mark Carney's press conference. To help us break it down, here's what CTV's chief political correspondent Vashi Kapellos had to say.
I thought there were two main takeaways, one on substance, one on style. On style, I think he clearly demarcated himself in this press conference, not only actually a little bit from what we were on the receiving end of during the campaign, but in particular from his predecessor, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Very different styles throughout the press conference than we were used to with Prime Minister Trudeau. I thought on substance, there are a number of takeaways, primarily that he's established like a framework, lots of dates for everything that's about to happen. And of course, our reporters laid that out. I think what it will allow us to do as journalists and Canadians is to measure his impact against those dates. So we are able to see whether what he is saying he is going to do to reach out to those voters, for example, or a whole host of other things actually does happen. Even, for example, bringing down the trade barriers by July 1st. We're going to know if it does happen by then.
Another positive for the Liberals tonight as their seat count jumps up by 1. After a vote validation process, the Ontario riding of Milton East Halton Hills South flipped tonight from the Conservatives' Parm Gill to the Liberals' Christina Tesser-Dirksen. That puts the Liberals back up to 169 seats in total. Conservative leader Pierre Polyv, who lost his own seat on election night, will soon have a chance to get a spot in the House of Commons with a by-election in another riding. CTV's Judy Trin takes a look at the process and how it might unfold.
After Pierre Polyv failed to win the riding that he held for more than 2 decades, losing to a rookie Liberal candidate by more than 4,000 votes, the Conservatives have cleared a path for him to return in rural Alberta.
Hey everybody, it's Damien Couric.
Damien Couric has represented Battle River Crowfoot since 2019, but he's quitting so Polyv can run. In a statement, Couric said an unstoppable movement has grown under his leadership, and we need Pierre fighting in the House of Commons to hold the Liberal minority government to account. Conservatives won Battle Creek Crowfoot with nearly 82% of the vote. The riding southeast of Edmonton will be a safe race for Polyv.
I think it means we're going to get a lot of attention, and I think that's exactly what this town needs.
He lost his seat. Why does he need to run here?
There's some in the constituency who might enjoy being represented, at least officially, by the leader of the party. But others who might say, well, this is a fair weather friend. He's representing us now because he has to.
On social media, Polyv says he accepts Couric's resignation with humility and appreciation and will work to earn the trust of the good people of Battle River Crowfoot.
I've already indicated to Mr. Polyv that if it's the decision of him and the Conservative Party to trigger, if I can put it that way, a by-election, I will ensure that it happens as soon as possible.
Okay.
No games, nothing, straight.
According to Elections Canada, once a seat becomes vacant, a by-election needs to be called within 180 days. Parliament doesn't resume until May 26. Even with these quick moves, it's unlikely Polyv will return to the House before the fall session. Heather.
CTV's Judy Trin in Ottawa. Thank you, Judy. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith commenting tonight about her first meeting today with the Prime Minister. Smith posting on Instagram that the two spoke at length about, quote, policies and legislation that are holding back Alberta's economy. They also discussed the trade dispute with the U.S., Smith describing the conversation as a positive first step. Ontario's auto sector dealt another blow today with GM announcing it's cutting back production at its Oshawa assembly plant. Hundreds of jobs will be lost, with the ripple effect likely to impact more than 1,000 additional jobs in the supply chain. CTV's John Vanavali-Rao on what GM says is behind the decision.
The crushing news was delivered to GM workers early this morning, with operations here essentially being slashed by a third.
As a union, we're devastated. I mean, these folks build a high-quality truck.
At this plant where they assemble the Chevy Silverado, they'd been making them around the clock. But as of this fall, the union says one of 3 shifts will be cut, throwing more than 700 people out of work. Adding it'll affect as many as 1,500 jobs in the supply chain.
The reality is that this decision by General Motors is clearly being done to appease Donald Trump, to look out for themselves in this trade war and not their employees.
This all comes a month after Trump slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian-built vehicles, a move directly targeting assembly plants.
Elbows up didn't do anything, did it? No, it didn't.
In a statement, GM cited forecasted demand and the evolving trade environment, but added these changes will help support a sustainable manufacturing footprint as GM reorients the Oshawa plant to build more trucks in Canada for Canadian customers. The truck model here is also assembled in the U.S. and Mexico. The union blasting GM's move as premature, saying the company should have waited to give Prime Minister Carney a chance to meet with Trump to negotiate an economic deal.
I hope that our new Prime Minister, when he sits down with Donald Trump next week, mentions Oshawa and what happened here today.
This is just the latest tariff-related blow to the auto sector in Ontario after Stellantis shut down its Windsor assembly plant for 2 weeks in April. Meanwhile, with the shift loss months away, the union's hoping there's time to convince GM to reverse its decision. John Venevalley-Rao, CTV News, Oshawa, Ontario.
Dramatic moments this afternoon in Lake Ontario, off the shores of Toronto, where a pilot was pulled from the water after his plane went down. These photos capture the moments just before impact. You can see a parachute deployed behind the small plane. The 49-year-old pilot, the only person on board, managed to slow his descent before the plane hit the water and submerged. Luckily, a group of sailors were nearby and rescued him from the water.
And then we got to it just as it sank. So the pilot was only in the water for maybe a minute or two, but we pulled him out and then we transferred him over. I probably caught just the tail end of it, just as it was approaching the water. At that point, the parachute had already deployed, so it slowed down considerably. But, I mean, it still hit the water at a pretty hard angle. But
the pilot, a doctor on his way to a medical call, said the plane lost power in the air. He suffered only minor injuries. To the sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players, the court hearing from the alleged victim herself for the first time in this trial. TSN's senior correspondent Rick Westhead on her testimony.
On the 5th day of the sexual assault trial of 5 former members of Canada's 2018 World Junior hockey team, the public finally heard from EM, the complainant in the case, whose allegations first became public nearly 3 years ago. Testifying via CCTV, EM spoke to the 14-person jury this afternoon and talked about a night in June 2018 when she went out with colleagues and met Michael McLeod and other members of Team Canada. She testified that throughout the course of the evening she had about a dozen alcoholic drinks and felt more inebriated as the night went on. She testified that she felt sandwiched dancing amongst the players. She said that she watched a video that showed one player slapping her on the buttocks, another player who pulled her ponytail, and a third player who picked her up and spun her around. She testified that she couldn't recall those moments before watching the videos. She also testified about meeting Michael McLeod early on after arriving at the bar, and how she spent time both drinking at the bar and dancing with McLeod, and found it curious that he didn't mind other players pulling her close to dance with them. She testified that she kind of had a feeling throughout the course of the evening that she was going to go back to Michael McLeod's hotel with him and that she was okay with that. Finally, the Crown Attorney showed her a video of her arriving at the Delta Armories Hotel approaching 2 a.m. in the morning, and court was adjourned for the day. Earlier on in the day, Boris Kachuk, another member of Team Canada who has faced no charges and is not accused of any wrongdoing, testified that he went back to the Delta Armories Hotel after partying at Jack's with his teammates. He said that when he went to his room, he passed Michael McLeod's room, and McLeod asked him to stop and come into his room for a moment. Kachuk testified that when he went in there was a woman lying on the bed, and that McLeod offered him a sexual act from that woman. Kachuk testified that he refused the act and that McLeod left the room for a moment or two. During that time, when he was alone with the woman, Kachuk testified that he never spoke to her, that she asked him for a bite of the pizza that he was eating. He did not give her a bite and left the room after being there for no more than 2 minutes. The trial continues on Monday.
TSN's Rick Westhead in London, Ontario. The suspect in last Saturday's deadly attack at a Vancouver festival made a brief appearance in court today. Wearing red prison clothes, 30-year-old Kaiji Adam Lowe was seen on video from a Surrey, BC detention centre. The judge has ordered a 30-day psychiatric assessment to see if he is fit for trial. Lowe, who is facing 8 counts of second-degree murder, will remain in custody. He's back in court on May 30th.
We mourn a loss of innocence. This could happen here. This could happen in our province.
Premier David Eby, along with Vancouver's mayor and interim police chief, attending a memorial mass tonight held at a Vancouver cathedral on a day of mourning for the victims of the deadly attack. It was one of several events taking place today across BC. A book of condolence for the victims has also been set up at the legislature in Victoria. Coming up after the break.
Grateful to your sacrifice of your life so many years ago.
Forever thankful for Canada's fight for freedom. Plus, the outcome of Prince Harry's legal fight to protect his family. A legal defeat for Prince Harry today, who had challenged the level of security he gets while in the UK.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has.
The prince told the BBC the downgrade in security he receives in the UK had been an issue between him and his father, and he won't travel there with his family under the current situation. It has been 8 decades since Canadian soldiers fought to free the Netherlands from Nazi occupation. Liberation Day, as it's known in the Netherlands, is this coming Monday, and commemorations are already underway. CTV's Andrew Johnson is there with more on what it means to surviving Canadian soldiers. Andrew.
Heather, it's remarkable, really. 80 years after the end of the Second World War, the Canadian government has brought more than 20 veterans back to the Netherlands. Remarkable because most of them, all of them, are right around 100 years old. But they haven't forgotten the men who fought beside them and didn't make it home.
I wish to speak to all here who died in the cause of Canada and fought for freedom of oppression. My message is a simple one. You are not forgotten. Your death is remembered, and we are still living souls here, grateful to your sacrifice of your life so many years ago.
The ceremony today was at the Roosbeek Canadian War Cemetery, the largest of several in the Netherlands. There are more than 2,300 Canadian soldiers buried there. Close to 8,000 Canadians, including Indigenous soldiers, died liberating the Netherlands in some of the toughest fighting of the war.
But they would do that for us, people they had never even met. So naturally, we, the liberated, want to know about our benefactors, who they were, what they looked like, what lives, what personal history they left in Canada.
The Faces to Graves Foundation in the Netherlands researches and tells the stories of the Canadians who gave their lives to push Germany out of Holland and deliver food to a nation that had been starving for months.
Tomorrow there will be a parade here in Apeldoorn where the Canadian veterans will be treated to a hero's welcome. And the 100-year-olds who made this trip know this could be their last chance to say, "You're welcome." Heather?
Andrew Johnson with the stories being shared in Apeldoorn, Netherlands. Still ahead, legal threats shift into high gear. Investigating if Tesla exploited a rebate loophole. Tesla is threatening to sue the Canadian government over what it calls a misunderstanding of a federal rebate program for electric vehicles. It comes after Transport Canada froze more than $40 million in rebates for the company. CTV's Adrian Gobriel breaks down the legal fight.
Tesla's threat to roll out a lawsuit stems from an investigation into whether the U.S.-based company exploited a Canadian taxpayer-funded EV rebate program.
Has there been some form of advanced knowledge? Has Tesla gamed the system? We don't know the answers to that.
In 2019, Ottawa kicked its IZEV program into gear. Dealers were instructed to front the $5,000 rebate on the promise the government would repay each dealership. On Friday, January 10th, car dealerships across the country received this email from Transport Canada saying due to the high uptake, the IZEV program will be paused in a few weeks. Over the next 72 hours, a handful of Tesla locations across Canada reported the sale of 8,600 vehicles, amounting to $43 million in government rebates. That Monday, the government closed the program, leaving other independently owned Canadian dealerships who've spoken to CTV News unable to process nearly $11 million in rebates already paid out to customers across Canada.
In my case, we're talking over $400,000 loss. Huge impact.
The officials of Transport Canada have written 2 letters, which I would characterize politely as cover their behind letters. We have a fiasco at Transport Canada.
Following a CTV News investigation, the Minister of Transport's office promised to repay Canadian-owned dealerships who are out of pocket. In an email to CTV News, Krista Freeland wrote in part that she has instructed Transport Canada to stop all EV rebate payments for Tesla vehicles in order to fully examine each claim individually and determine whether all are eligible and valid.
It's that move that has sparked the legal threat by the electric vehicle giant. As for Ottawa's promise to repay independently owned dealerships, those we've spoken with say they've yet to receive a penny. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Preparations are underway at the Vatican for the conclave that will select a new pope. Workers were seen on the roof of the Sistine Chapel installing the chimney that will signal a successor to Pope Francis. Ballots are burned in a special furnace during the conclave. Black smoke means no decision. White smoke confirms a new pope has been selected. Voting begins May 7th. Still ahead, we take a trip into Canada's past. A group of women with a special connection to the Bay share their memories of a special moment in time. As Hudson's Bay liquidates all of its stores across Canada, we're hearing sentimental stories about the iconic company, including one about a group of women in Calgary who were some of the first to be on the Hudson's Bay Teen Fashion Council. CTV's Kathy Lee now on their unique experience with the Bay.
A step through these doors is like a step back in time for these women. A wave of nostalgia washes over them. More than 6 decades ago, they were one of the first to be on the Hudson's Bay Teen Fashion Council in Calgary.
It was a huge deal for us. I think we felt very important somehow.
As the iconic Canadian retailer operating for more than 350 years closes countrywide, this group reunited to bid farewell.
It's just heartbreaking.
And to reminisce about their time as fashion ambassadors all those years ago.
There you are.
Of the 5 high schools in the city at that time, only 2 students from each were chosen for the coveted positions.
We were chosen by a very serious and disciplined math teacher.
We modeled, we had fashion shows and often got the clothes. We got so many wonderful lessons in beauty care, skin and hair. None of the hair was gray at that time.
The stylish high school students, possibly the original influencers, helped showcase the latest fashion trends.
We were sort of like a teen connection. And it promoted young people coming to the Bay.
And as a side gig, they also worked part-time.
I was assigned to the lingerie department one Mother's Day, and I was so exhausted after 8 hours on my feet. I got on the bus, fell fast asleep. We lived in Parkdale, and I ended up in Bowness, and the bus driver had to wake me up.
The stories endless, the friendships formed, and lessons learned, timeless treasures. And although this chapter of the Bay has come to a close, it was a chance for these 6, even for a moment, to stroll down memory lane. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Some treasured stories. That is our newscast for this Friday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.